much for what you have provided for us today. So we're actually almost close to getting ourselves back on schedule here. Is Jackie mic'd? Yes. Just all ready to go. That is so awesome. So cool. All right. I'm going to tell you, the last few days I've had, I would now say, Jackie, 6 people say to me, I'm so excited that you're having Jackie Martin at the anniversary because I love her and everything she says and I can't wait to see her again.
No pressure.
Oh, I'm so devastated because I heard you're having Jackie Martin and I'm not going to be able to be there. So are we excited to hear Jackie Martin?
Oh my goodness.
And I love it. Jackie is the Chief Motivational Officer for A Matter of Motivation, LLC. She is a lifelong entrepreneur, an enthusiasm junkie, a professional speaker, and a serial leader. She brings practical tips, doable tactics, and measurable ways to improve your personal, team, and organizational motivation and engagement. She is also a John Maxwell certified speaker and coach, a change cycle certified expert, and an NLI practitioner with more than 25 years of motivational experience. More than that, this is a woman, you want to talk about servant leadership, our keynote speaker coming in here, what can I do? And she's over here folding calendars, so when you look in your bags, you know when the next XC meetings are around you. We'll talk about that in a little bit. And she's out there, now what can I do next? Can I go help stuff some things? Can I go talk to so-and-so? Who does that when they're coming to speak at your event? Jackie Martin. Give a round of applause.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I'm so happy to be here. I'm so excited to be with all of you. And I want to ask you something just real quick. Reach inside those bags. By the way, do you love the little white fluff? That's one of my favorite things to do. Take tissue and go whoosh, and then stick it in the bag. But look inside for 2 things. If you'll grab these 2 things, there's pink half sheet of paper, and a little football on this little sheet of paper. Pull those 2 things out. I've got something I'm going to give you here, a little gift from me to you at the end. So if you pull those things out, that'd be great. How about that? I distracted you right at the beginning of my own talk. Is that crazy or what? Okay, so here's what. Pull those things out and you put the bag down. We'll look through all the rest of it later. But here's what I want you to do is pull those things out. And then here's what I want you to do. You just set that on the table in front of you because that pink sheet's a place for you to take notes. I don't know if you're like me, but I like to have something to write on when I hear something I like. So if you do, write it there. And I'll tell you about the other card in just a little bit. But first, do me a favor. And I want you to look to the person on your right, to look to the person next to you and make sure they're okay. Are they okay? Okay, turn to the person on the other side. Are you okay? Are you all right? Okay, everybody doing fine? Okay, I'll tell you why I asked you that. I'm concerned. I'm just a little worried about something. There's a doozy of an illness going around. I mean, it's a tough one. It's a real wretched kind of dis-ease. And in a room like this of beautiful, amazing women, it could spread like wildfire. So I just wanted to make sure everybody was doing okay. Is you okay? But okay. And just a little bit, I'm going to tell you about this disease. I want to tell you a little bit about what the issues are and kind of the symptoms to see if you ever recognize it, or also what some of the danger signs are of it. And then I want to give you just a couple of ideas how to cure it. So have I already piqued your interest what I'm talking about? Okay, what I'm talking about is that terrible disease called comparisonitis. You've had it, have you? Okay, so let me just see how we're doing. Now let's talk on it. Because listen, we're transparent with each other in here, right? It's okay. So what's said in this meeting stays in. No, we don't. We want you to tell everybody about it. No. Okay, so here's the deal. If we're really being transparent with one another, when you walked in here today, did anyone have this kind of a thought or feeling? When you walked in the room and looked at this room of amazing, beautiful women and incredible businesses all represented here, did anybody have a thought like, gee, she's thinner and taller and prettier and has better hair. Look at her shoes. And oh my gosh, that table looks beautiful. And wow, she must have a great upline. And golly, Monty, your kids even behave better than mine do. Anybody? How many of you had a thought like that? Okay, so the rest of you are lying. But no. Here's the deal. Even asking you that question is kind of a double bind. I get that. Because you may be thinking, well, I can't say I didn't. So if I don't raise my hand, then that may mean I'm kind of conceited. And of course, I wouldn't ever think that. Or if you raised your hand, you might think, well, that's going to say that I lack self-esteem. And I don't want to say that. But can I just frankly admit to you that every once in a while, well, all the time I'm Jackie Martin, but every once in a while, I suffer from comparisonitis. Anybody? Okay, so here's the scoop with the comparisonitis. There's a lot of ways that we can look at it, and too many times we suffer, and maybe in this room, and maybe especially with this group of people, we don't so much. But how many of you are leaders, parents, have children, or have ever been a child? Raise your hand. Okay. So probably somewhere along the line you've recognized these signs, and I want to give you some ideas of how to recognize it, and I want to give you some ideas of how to combat it, because here's the deal, it can be pervasive. And on teams, especially women, we have a little more struggle with this from time to time, because I have to tell you, I'm a self-professed people pleaser. Anybody? Anybody? Okay, because Carol, I have to admit, I just really admire and I love you, and I wanted to please you today, so I was helping out, right? Is that what everybody does, right? Okay, so sometimes people pleasers have a little bit more tendency toward this kind of disease than others do. So we're just being transparent. There's a couple of things that I want to give you. If you're looking for the symptoms of it, either in yourself or on your teams, here are a couple of things that you're going to want to look for. Have you ever said or heard somebody say, well, she has all the luck? I never have any luck like that. She's charmed. She just has all the luck. Has anybody ever heard that? Like, you look outside of yourself at somebody else and you go, wow, well, no wonder. Look at her, right? Okay, so here's how it kind of comes down. It comes in a couple of different versions. One might be you look at other people and you think something gives them an advantage, right? So you might say something like, well, that's because she's taller, smarter, lives in a small town so she knows everybody. Oh, no, lives in a large town so there's a lot of people. Has a great upline not like mine. Or has this beautiful business that she's had for years, or maybe she just started, of course she's excited. And all of it, anybody? So we look that way sometimes, but then unfortunately we look on the other side and we look at ourselves and we see ourselves at a disadvantage. So we may say something like, well, I'll never accomplish that because I didn't go to college, because my husband doesn't really understand what I do, because my kids are too needy, because I don't have kids, because I am an empty nester, because I have too many kids at home. Where we begin to look at other people and we see ourselves as at a disadvantage. You see, either one of these ways, it comes down into two different directions, and both of them can cause us some harm. One direction is we look at somebody else and then we see them as prettier, smarter, more successful than we are, and we come out and happen to be at some kind of a disadvantage, or we feel inadequate. Or we look at somebody else, then maybe and we perceive them to be less talented, less pretty, less successful, and then we feel superior. Ladies, both of those feelings that we have, if we've ever had them enter our mind, can cause a lot of harm to us. What it really does is it robs us of our joy. Like many of you, I'm a woman of faith. I really believe God put each and every one of us here on this planet for a completely unique purpose. Every one of us has our own journey that we're on, and that journey is going to take us in lots of different directions. The unfortunate part is when we begin to look around at other people and they're on another journey, when we start comparing ourselves to them, you can see how we're going to get skewed information, that we're buying into a vision or examples of things that aren't true. So I want to give you a couple dangers that why, if we stay in comparisonitis too long, it can cause us some problems. Number one is we begin to start to nitpick. Anybody? You know what I'm talking about? We start to find faults in other people. I don't know if you've ever felt this way, but every once in a while I've fallen into this where I see somebody that I perceive has it all going on. She's beautiful. She's got all this stuff. She's successful. She seems to have it all together at ease. And then I start looking for what? Yeah, I start looking for faults. I start nitpicking. I'm looking for chinks in the armor. You know what I'm talking about? But unfortunately, sometimes we even point that little thing at ourselves. There's a book called Playing Big. If you haven't read that, it's transformational. It's by a woman named Tara Morris. Anybody read that book? Phenomenal. Last fall, I did a mastermind on it. Going to do some more this fall. Amazing. And here's what she talks about. She talks about the fact that you and I have two voices. Some of us have more, but two voices that are talking to us. There's one voice you might recognize. It's that inner critic. You know the one? You know the one that's going, oh, I told you so. See, I wasn't going to do it. Why are you calling at 5 o'clock? Nobody's going to want to listen to you. You know, I mean, you know what I'm talking about? Yeah. But then there's another voice. And she's called her inner mentor. And let me tell you who she is. She is you 20 years from now. She's you looking back at you and going, oh, honey, relax. You got it going on. Stop feeling so anxious. Stop feeling so worried. Relax. It's you. But here's my question. Who do you hear more? See, we have to consciously turn down this gal's voice. Right? And we need to turn up that inner mentor to begin to give us that positive encouragement and feedback and mostly perspective. Now, some of you may be saying, well, gosh, this is so loud. How do I drown her out? And sometimes I can't even hear my inner mentor. Well, then you may need an outer mentor to help out, which would be a coach or somebody that might be able to help give you better voice to that person you will be, telling you how things are okay. So part of this nitpicking will go away when we begin to listen with real perspective and put ourselves on our own journey. Here's another thing that comparisonitis can do. It kind of drives us to seek out too much positive attention for ourselves. You see, there's another book I love called Smart Tribes. For those of you who are leaders, excellent book. Talks a lot about what Susan was talking about concerning neuroscience, but Christine Comerford talks about the fact that we all need, as you mentioned, safety. It's like Maslow's hierarchy of needs. You've all heard this. We need this safety. But we also need two other important things. Boy, it comes here. We need to feel like we belong, and we need to feel like we matter. And so what happens, obviously, in this warm, beautiful environment, people feel those things. But there are times out there in the real world when we're off doing our own thing and we're away from this loving group that we feel like, I don't even know if what I'm doing every day matters or if anybody even notices. So unfortunately, when comparisonitis catches us, we find ourselves kind of seeking approval. We're too over the top trying to get attention for ourselves. That can be a tough one. So I'm hoping I'm pointing out a few things that maybe you've noticed, maybe even amongst your team or in yourself, and that may be a sign of comparisonitis. But here's one other one, and this is a big one, and boy, you can only know it if you feel it inside your own gut. If you're ever uncomfortable or feel discomfort when someone else succeeds, then you might have comparisonitis. Ladies, comparisonitis damages relationships. It begins to put us on this hierarchy kind of thing that puts either you above or them above, and it causes issues. I'll give you just a quick example of it. There was I was with one particular direct selling company for 17 years. I've been in direct selling industry for about 22 years. And this particular company, we had these monthly meetings, about 100 and something people, kind of a group like this. And we would always give recognition with respect to sales and recruiting, etc. So it was wonderful. And in the middle of probably about halfway through that amount of time, there was a woman who just started to emerge. She was new, and everything she did just seemed to be gold. I mean, she was rocketing to the top. You know what I'm talking about? She's one of those superstars. So what was happening was she would show up to these meetings, and every time a award was given, her name would come up. right? And she just had it going on. And so month after month, she actually won a national award for recruiting. But I remember specifically as if it was yesterday. I was helping to lead the recognition, and I was announcing the winner of the top in recruiting for that particular month. And she was called, of course. And do you know what I heard in the room? Snickers. No, I mean, I really did hear snickers. I mean, I heard laugh, and I was like, at first I was taken aback. I thought they were like applauding her or something, but what do you think they were feeling? Yeah, well, we started to notice, and I was mortified, and I didn't know if she heard it or not, but I was like, oh no, what's happened? People are beginning to go, oh yeah, her again. And I thought, oh my word, I wonder, oh, she's okay. So we did lots of affirming and lots of wonderful encouragement and all of that. But it stood out to me what might have occurred just then in the hearts of the people who felt that way. Well, just to tell you what ended up happening with her, I don't know if she heard it that day or not, but she ended up jumping companies. She went to a different place. She went to a brand new startup, and do you know what she did? She rocketed directly to the top of that company and remains there today as a multi-million-dollar team leader. And isn't that amazing? She didn't listen to that. She knew who she was. She wasn't worried about comparing herself to anybody who might have felt that way. And so that's part of what recognizing when those kinds of things up. It actually happened one time in my small team meeting. I had a couple of ladies who had done really well, but then they stopped working on things. And somebody came along who was brand new. She was really going gangbusters. And I started to notice this discomfort in the room about it. I talked to them about it later. And it really was this sense of inadequacy they were feeling. So I brought all kinds of encouragement to them to feel differently and better. But you and I have to make sure we're finding the ways, if we've got comparisonitis, either in ourselves or in our teams, that we do something about it and quick. So here's what I've got for you. I actually have 8 different ways to reconnect. I've really got time to share just a few of them with you, and I'm going to give you an idea. I'm going to give you a gift of all of them, so just hold off for just a second, but I want to focus on just a few of them if you don't mind. So here's number 1. If you want to battle comparisonitis, number 1, be grateful. And can I just say something? It's one thing to be grateful, but what I'm going to suggest is that you cultivate gratitude. Guys, sometimes when we get there, when we go there, when we're feeling down on something and we're hard on ourselves, it's hard to go, oh yeah, well just feel grateful when you don't. So here's how you do it. Every day for the next 2 weeks, here's what I want you to do. I want you to get out a little notepad or something, maybe one you brought from here, set it by your bedside, and every night at the end of the night, I want you to take that, not at the end of the night, the beginning of the night, before you go to sleep, at the end of the day, I want you to pull that notepad out before you go to sleep, okay? And I want you to download at least 3 to 5 very specific things that you have to be grateful for. Something that happened that day, something that somebody did. Okay, now I get it. Some of you are going, oh yeah, my kind of day. Listen, sometimes we're going to have to search for a few things. The sun came up, I got out of bed, my feet still work. I don't know, whatever, write it down. Okay? So you're going to write down these 3 to 5 things at least that you're grateful for very specifically. Now I'm just curious, what do you think happens to you if you do that over time? You find more things to be grateful for. What else? You start to believe it. Listen, I got to tell you something. There is something to acting as if. When you begin to feel that, you begin to write those things down. There's a phrase that I love to use, and it's whatever you focus on expands. Yeah. So write that down. Whatever you focus on expands. If you're focusing on the bad stuff in life, guess what you're going to get more of? That. If you're focusing on what you have to be grateful for, guess what you're going to get? More things to be grateful for. So that's number 1. Cultivate specifically and consciously that gratitude in your own heart. And I really do believe that kind of gratitude is what God asks of us. He wants to give us more, but he's waiting for us to recognize what he already did. And so being able to recognize that is so important. I want to give you another one. This is actually number 6 on my list of 8. Here it is. Keep in mind, we do not know the whole picture. Okay, everybody with me on this? What am I talking about? Where is it that we see people talk about their amazing lives? On Facebook. Okay, so let me just say something about social media, but it also can be, we can be guilty of this in this room, in these kinds of environment. We show up and we talk about the wonderful things that's happened. This great business is fabulous and the kids are great and everybody's husband's fabulous and everything's going well. And that's all we see or hear. It can be very discouraging if right now you're in a season that it isn't quite as fabulous. For you to go on social media and see everybody's amazing kids going back to school and amazing vacations they just finished taking and not feel like something's wrong with us. Please understand that we don't know what's going on behind the doors. We don't understand or maybe recognize all that goes into the amazing successes that people are putting there. You guys, we don't know the whole picture. And so it's important for us to recognize that even the most beautiful, polished, amazing, successful individual could have sorrow and hurt and fear in their life. And you too. And so it's very important for us to be sure we recognize there's always another story. There's always somebody who's going to be taller, thinner, prettier, have better kids. And that's the way it's supposed to be, right? Because we're all on our own journey. Let me give you one more idea on this, and then I'm going to give you a gift of all of these. One other gift to be able to get rid of comparisonitis is change who you are comparing yourself to. The reality is, as I mentioned, that we're all on our own journey. Each of us are growing and moving and changing, and many of the things, I love the beautiful pillars about personal growth that Bonnie, that you shared. So important that we're not the same next year as we were this year. That we're comparing ourselves, number one, to ourselves because of that specific journey that we're on. But also I believe that we should only be working for an audience of one. And that audience, our Creator, is looking at us and saying, listen, stop worrying about the future. Stop stressing about what it is you're supposed to be doing. In fact, I honestly believe that God's just waiting for us to just make up our mind. He's going, come on, if you'll just commit to something and make up your mind, I'm ready to lavish you with wonderful success. And so part of this is picking out who is it you're really comparing yourself to. Yourself. And how you want to be a year from now or 20 years from now, like your inner mentor is looking. And who it is that you're working for. Well, so those are just a few of these. So I've gone over some of the symptoms and maybe some of the dangers that can happen with that. And I've given you just a few of the cures for it. I wanted to just share with you one other thing. I would love for you to get the rest of them and download them and be able to share them. So here's what I'd like to ask you to do. On the bottom of that pink sheet of paper is a place for you to text. Text me, would you? There's a phone number on there. Just text me that, and I want you to put the words 8, the number 8, more joy. So you just type into that phone number. You're going to text me, and you're going to put 8, because I've got 8 tips, more joy. And if you'll type that to me, then I'm going to send you the whole list that you can share with your team. It'll be in your email when you get back. Here's the deal. It is totally time to shake off the shackles of comparisonitis. Girls, you are on a freewheeling, beautiful, unique, incredibly personal journey. Each of us are going to do this at our own pace, in our own time, with all of the things that come into our life and the relationships. This is your chance to be able to make a huge impact by letting go of all of that. One other thing I want to give you as a gift, just real quick, is you're about to enter an amazing time of the year. In many of your businesses, this fourth quarter that's coming up as we come into the fall, you're going to do more business in those last few months of the year than you might have done the entire rest of the month. Do not be encumbered with the challenges of comparisonitis. Get rid of it right now. Really practice these cures so that you can be free of that and sailing full out when you hit that time of year. That other little postcard that I gave you on there, I'm actually doing a workshop called Fourth and Goal. It's a follow-up to my Get Your Year in Gear, which I do in January. I'll do it again in January. But I would love to invite you to come and join that. It just really is to help you make a plan and to help you come up with the strategies very specifically for how you can make those last 3 months of this year, specifically that last quarter, special for you. And so on the back there, I've given you a gift of a really pretty great discount. So that'll give you an opportunity to do it. It's time to let go of comparison, don't you think?
Yes.
It's kind of a heavy burden when we're trying to be somebody else or live somebody else's life. You know what? Each of you was put here for a very specific reason. It's time to stand in your own light, your own beautiful, unique light. Wonderful, amazing, being the person that God created you to be. I hope these ideas, just a couple of hints, maybe a little bit of touching at our heartstrings for sometimes we go there too. Also to give you some ideas of how you can help others when they're there too has been a benefit to you. And more than anything, I really want you to be able to reconnect to the joy that's out there when you are simply you. Thank you so much. Thank you.